Now, today we delve into a deeply sensitive and often challenging aspect of life, dealing with loss and the grieving process. Today in studio joining us is registered counsellor Beverly Dankers, who is going to help us navigate through the intricate terrain of grief and loss. Beverly, thank you so much for joining us and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Belisa.
Now, a lot of us do deal with grief in different ways. It looks different on different people, but there is a common concept of grief. So what is grief and how does it impact people's lives on a daily basis?
So grief is the process that we go through when there has been a really difficult loss, but people deal with it differently, as you said. But the common things are, when you're just hearing it, you go into shock, or most often in that first week or so, people lose their appetite, they don't sleep. They may become irritable, they're sad, they cry, they yell, they scream, just to try and deal with what they've just heard.
Absolutely, and you've already kind of started touching on the subject that there are different stages of grief. Now, number one, what are those stages of grief? And do you often find that they can overlap and maybe show themselves in different orders?
Denial is one of them, where this can't be true. I can't believe this, and there's just that not wanting to accept that there's been this loss. And then there's anger. Sometimes people, why would this happen to me? Why would God do this to me? And sometimes people stay in that. Then there's that bargaining. I will do this if I can just get that person back. Then there's also sometimes people go into depression, and then finally acceptance. But the other two is guilt, and then upward bound, which with guilt, it's, oh, I wish I had done this last thing before. I wish we had discussed that issue we had, and guilt sets in. And then finally, there's that upwardness where you've now get to a point where you can move, and life isn't always the same, but you're able to move forward and accept that this is what has happened.
I mean, for myself, just hearing you speak, it just reminds me and allows me an opportunity to reflect on how grief and loss in these stages have presented themselves in my own life. I mean, I'm now at a stage where I'm comfortable enough to talk about it, but I lost my sister recently, well, not recently, a couple of years ago, but it does feel like it happened yesterday. Mm-hmm. And especially not only experiencing it within the family, but even publicly, it's been extremely, extremely challenging. This conversation definitely does leave a lump in my throat and gives me a heavy heart, but it doesn't always need to feel like that. It can feel light. It can feel like a graduation into the next realm of existence, one that we might not know here in the present. So with that being said, if someone is going through grief and loss in their lives, it doesn't only have to be, in my case, it was the losing of a very dear sister to me. But for anyone else, grief can look different on any topic. So what else can people experience this grief and this loss over?
Sure, if I think of COVID, yes, people lost their lost loved ones, but they also lost their jobs. They lost finances. So loss is something that's so prevalent all the time, really. Sometimes it's an expectation. We had hoped that something would happen, and then it doesn't happen, and then we go into a grieving process. So people lose pets. Divorce is another, so there's lots of other things apart from losing somebody to death that is loss. And if we don't know how to navigate through that, we could stay stuck in one place and not live. We will die with either these circumstances that have happened or with the person that has left us.
And more importantly, after going through the entire process of grief, or if you have observed and experienced the loved one who is going through that grief and that loss, what is the best way to support them? What is the best way to be there? I mean, for myself, I'm trying not to cry. For myself, my mom tells me that I grieve in a very, I don't know if it's good or bad or toxic way, but I find I get a lot of anger. I snap, I'm very snappy, and it's just been extremely challenging. And then having someone, and I know my mom means all the best, and she only wants the best for me, but she says, I'm not dealing well. So how can you support someone, and how can you support yourself during the process?
You know, Belisa, when we lose somebody, sometimes it feels like we're losing a part of ourselves. And that's really tough. That's hard. And the most important thing is that we actually identify what that feeling is and allow that sadness to be there, that we feel the pain. Often we want to ignore it or avoid it, but when we avoid it and ignore it, it's going to come up in a different way. And sometimes we become irritable. Sometimes we may go to substance abuse. Sometimes we fight, you know. And sometimes all we really need to do is to do what Peter Levine says. He says, we should be like a pendulum. And so what that would do is, yes, you know, when we feel that sadness coming, we move with it. We move towards it.
Sure.
And we feel that. And then we swing into it, and then we swing out of it, and we go back to where we can rest and ground ourselves again. And then the second thing he says is that we should use the resources around us. That could be a friend to talk to. It could be a massage. Because on the anniversaries of either like a birthday or an anniversary of the death, or a wedding anniversary, or any Christmas time, you know, or any day you would have celebrated with somebody and they are not there anymore, it's a painful thing.
Well, this conversation is extremely complex, it's sensitive, and thank you so much for being vulnerable and sharing your own stories with us. And not only that, but upskilling us and giving us advice as to how to make it to the end of that rainbow. We really appreciate it. Now, it is clear that navigating the complexities of grief is a deeply personal and evolving journey. So again, thank you for everything that you've helped us with, the insights to a very important and relevant topic. We're all facing grief at some point, and on social media, we would like to know from you, what is something that has helped you heal after a loss? Please do leave your comments under our social media pages, and remember to use that hashtag Afternoon Express. Thank you.